we're seeing from the Republicans is frankly two things: drill more and nuclear power, and that's it. They say, oh yes, wind and solar, those are amusing little sources, but it's really not the main part of our plan. Well, that's not what Americans want. They want a balanced plan, and today we are urging Congress to pass the Comprehensive American Energy Security and Taxpayer Protection Act. But before we talk about this legislation, I just want to say something right up front. Of course, drilling is going to continue to be a huge part of our economy, and we are giving out drilling permits at a record rate in Colorado. But I want to say something that's really important to understand. We have made huge inroads in Colorado with the renewable energy economy, and thousands of jobs have been created, and people have lowered their utility rates. Unfortunately, that sort of all got erased when the gas prices went up, and the Republicans turned this argument on the head and said, oh, Democrats are blocking drilling. It's just simply not true. Drilling is increasing at a record rate, and they are only drilling on about 20 to 25% of the leased land. They have 75% more land onshore and about 70 to 80% more offshore. So drilling can't even keep up with putting rigs in. So there's really nothing stopping them. So when you hear that slogan, if you ever hear it again, drill baby drill, there's really nothing stopping them, and it's a complete red herring. Again, it's something to just dissuade us from talking about the real issues.
We need to be moving in all different directions. We need a diversified approach to our energy crisis in the United States. It also commits America to a renewable energy future by offering jobs, extending and expanding tax incentives for renewable energy, electricity, solar and wind, and fuel from America's heartland, as well as moving towards plug-in hybrid cars. It's also requiring 15% of our American electricity to come from renewable energy. In the state of Colorado, we've really done a better job of that. We're now at 20% coming from renewable energy. This comprehensive energy plan from the federal government also includes a compromise to responsibly open up the outer continental shelf for drilling with environmental protections and demanding that the big oil companies use the leases that they've already been issued. We have millions and millions of acres that have already been leased to the oil companies that are not being used at this time. The bill also promotes efficiency and conservation that will save consumers billions, with tax incentives and loans for energy-efficient homes, buildings, appliances, and updated efficiency standards for buildings.
Does anyone remember back in 2006 when Texas oil man turned President George Bush said that we are addicted to oil? Well, since then America has exhibited all of the classic symptoms of addiction. And this latest push by congressional Republicans to drill baby drill is like an addiction, an addict tearing apart his own house to find more money for his next fix. Calls of drill here, drill now, drill baby drill are a little more than Republicans' latest weapon of mass distraction in an effort to maintain the status quo and divert America from meaningful and sustainable solutions to our energy challenges. Calls for increased domestic drilling are a distraction for 5 major reasons. One is peak oil. On an annual basis, America has yet to produce anywhere near as much oil as it did back in the early 1970s, despite increased global demand. The production rate for every oil field that has ever been drilled consistently follows a bell curve, where it starts off very steep after the well is soon tapped, levels off, and then enters a gradual state of decline. America did experience a slight bump in its production rate in the late 1970s with the introduction of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, but the inevitable downward trend returned quickly after that. Tapping additional domestic oil reserves would end up being little more than moguls on the way down to depletion. I could call them moguls not only because they make the downward production curve look like a lumpy sea slope, but also because it will keep transferring far too much of our national wealth to the moguls in the oil industry. Point number 2, drill what you already have leased. Like we've already heard before, the areas covered by the offshore drilling moratorium include the Atlantic, Pacific, and Florida Gulf coasts, and they hold an estimated total of 19 billion barrels of oil. On the other hand, the areas that are already open for domestic drilling and are already leased by the oil companies hold 67 billion barrels of oil, more than 3 times as much oil as in the banned areas. So why does drill baby drill have to apply almost exclusively to the banned offshore areas. Point number 3, don't hold your breath for that offshore oil. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the EIA, even if we were to lift that offshore drilling ban today, that oil would not reach our gas tanks until 2017 at the earliest, and it would have no meaningful impact on oil prices until 2030 at the earliest. This is not even a short-term solution, as proponents of lifting the ban have been continued to report. Point number 4, don't forget about infrastructure. Along with the price of the oil itself as a global commodity, one must also consider the infrastructure needed to extract, transport, refine, and distribute that oil. The quality of the oil coming out of the ground now, from deep under the sea, from the tar sands of Canada and so on, is far lower than what used to come out in what we call gushers. And it takes a great deal more energy and money to turn it into usable gasoline. A wide variety of energy industry experts agree that oil companies worldwide will have to retool and even completely rebuild their aging infrastructure in order to handle this new oil, and have to do that to the tune of tens of trillions of dollars over the next few decades. That was trillions with a T. Seeing how oil companies have already been passing on the global price of oil to us through the gas pump, we can expect to see the infrastructure costs passed on to us as well. And keep in mind that once all that expensive new infrastructure is finally in place, it will be effectively for one-time only use as we continue to exploit this non-renewable resource. Compare that to a solar panel or a wind turbine that can capture free fuel forever. Point number 5, the best solution of all, calls of drill, 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 do little more than distract us from taking advantage of the cleanest, cheapest, most abundant, and most reliable form of energy on Earth. And that is the energy that you don't need because your vehicle, your building, your appliance are so efficient that it doesn't need it. So we need to change our energy debate from a focus on how do we get more to how do we use less and still be able to accomplish the same things in our lives. In the 10 years until offshore oil would finally reach our gas tanks, we could do so much more than that to enhance our energy security by doing things like encouraging commuters to maximize their gas mileage, keeping their cars clean, tuned up, and, sorry McCain campaign, keep your tires properly inflated, while also encouraging them to find alternate modes of transportation like carpooling, public transit, scooters, bikes, walking, telecommuting whenever possible. We need to encourage our civic leaders to make their communities less car-friendly and more people-friendly. We need to encourage automakers to shift away from petroleum-fueled vehicles to flex fuel and electric-powered vehicles, thus leading to truly renewable-powered transportation. And, of course, we must encourage our energy producers to increase the availability of sustainable biofuels and electricity for transportation uses. And, of course, by encourage, I mean incentivize through more sustainable and less oil-based public policies. In conclusion, domestic drilling will be a part of America's future energy needs, but it must become a much smaller piece of a puzzle that includes increased efficiency and conservation and more sustainable biofuels. Thank you.